became mediumistically inclined. But he concluded that women were far more sensitive than men mediumistically. And a lot of, well, you might know this yourself, but probably about 70% of male mediums tend to be gay. It doesn't make you gay,
Really?
but yeah, if you make a study of it, and it's to do with the hormonal system, because the hormonal system also changes, and there are changes, radical changes that occur in the brain. And more recently, in California University, they did autopsies on the bodies of mediumistic people, and they found that there was a crystalline deposit around the pineal glands, and that their pineal gland was marginally larger than in an ordinary person. So Tutinsky concluded that it was a sort of a radar device, a homing device, that when a medium is working, it becomes very active and allows them to intuitively, to begin with, to home into an environment. But when there's some kind of communication from a deceased or disembodied soul, something else happens, as you will know yourself. When you hit on something, when it's really working well for you, there's a rush of adrenaline. You feel on a high. And if you're working mediumistically and you know it's not work for you, it doesn't matter how many people come up to you and say, that was brilliant. You know intuitively that it wasn't brilliant because you haven't got that rush of adrenaline. But when it is good, when it's spot on, you feel the heart will race, your tummy will churn, and you have a high, almost as though you've imbibed something that stimulated your brain. So mediumship does have a psychology behind it. And I've always said, and I've had some good science teachers who've said, look, it's not normal. Seeing dead people is not normal, but it's also not abnormal either. But today, because people are so discerning with all the TV programs, the more analytical and observant, mediums are damned if they do and damned if they don't. Because if you're brilliant as a medium, you'll still get criticized by the skeptics. And if you're not good, you're on a loser anyway. So mediumship is quite specific. As you know, the aim of mediumship is to prove the continuity of the soul beyond death. And that's not always possible, because I wouldn't expect my mother or my father to be floating around me all the time, every 24 hours a day, because the spirit world is real to them, if you know what I mean.
Right, right, absolutely. Yeah, it makes total sense. I've had that high. I
Yeah,
know exactly what you're talking about. There is that rush, and that's kind of how I can tell if I'm in the power or not. When I'm in the
exactly.
power, it's like it's almost like you're connected, like you plug into it,
Yeah,
and you've got that electrical surge going through you, and then there's a coming down from it. Literally I can feel like I'll finish a gallery session and I'll tell people, well, they're gone, that's it, they're gone.
exactly.
And I literally feel it like something lifted up out of the room.
Yeah, well, when you worked in Cornwall, when you came over a few years ago, I could feel that from you. Um, I could feel the electricity. I could feel your adrenaline. I know you were probably a little bit apprehensive, working,
Absolutely.
but you could feel it,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
you held them in the palm of your hands, so much so that they were so captivated with your presence, and that came across really, it came across brilliantly.
It's really got a lot to do with the audience too. I mean, when you've got an audience that's very receptive and they're open and they're welcoming, that
Yeah,
helps as well. If you have a group of people where their arms are folded and they're sitting there scowling and they're questioning and they're closed
yeah,
off, and that can really hinder the process as
yeah,
well.
exactly.
So
But
they were just such an accepting group, and still to this day I can still get that impression of that child's bicycle in my head.
yeah,
I
but
see that wheel turning, and so that impression stayed with me for so long. It really it made a huge impression on me.
Well, the other thing about mediums, young mediums particularly, you do have to have broad shoulders because the audiences or congregations, depending on where you're working, can be very cruel, particularly today. I mean, they can criticize you, they can be very skeptical, but they can hurt you. And you do have to be very strong to be a medium and not be disheartened by what people say because it is a cruel environment, a cruel profession to be involved in. And if you're not strong, you'll falter and you'll fail and you'll give it all up.
That's true. That's very true. And you never know who's in that audience.
Exactly.
The instance in Cornwall that he speaks of, there was actually, unbeknown to me at the time, a lady who was the head of a spiritualist church
Yes.
there. And she did later, on a following night or two, come down rather harshly on it because of my methods being different coming from the United
Yeah.
States. And you have to drop the ego though. You have to look at everything that's coming to you from someone that has been doing it a lot longer and take it as constructive criticism. And a lot of people, you really have, yeah, you got to be kind of tough skinned because a lot of mentors, especially if they're British, are going to be tough like that. They're going to that's how they teach, and that's how they get their point across. So there are high expectations, and it's not for the meek, that's for sure.
The lady in question, without mentioning her name, she's no longer a friend, incidentally. And
Oh,
she's been a medium for many years. But the point I'm trying to make is even the most experienced of mediums who claim that they've done it for so long, they're not necessarily the best because mediumship is becoming more modern today. We need younger mediums who are going to present themselves in an up to date way because mediumship tends to be old fashioned. And I think we all have. Well, I did when I first started. You have mediums that you look up to and admire, and we tend to, without intentionally doing it, we tend to mimic them, copy their style, and that's something young mediums need to break away from to develop their own inimitable style so that mediumship becomes unique and they become unique too.
right. So in the development of mediumship, I mean, what would um, can you take our listeners through like a step by step? I mean, how would you decide who would be the right person for mediumship? And even though it's something you're born with, some people who are not born with it, I mean, is it like a musical ability where some people can actually attune themselves to it if they learn properly and sit with spirit long enough?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has the ability to develop a psychic skill. We all have you can, I don't want to dishearten people, but, you know, your listeners might be thinking, well, I mightn't have anything to develop. But you do have, sitting in a development circle, so called, will bring out the best in you, the best qualities, your full potential. And often you can surprise yourself. You might just develop the ability to be psychic or become very intuitive. It doesn't matter what it is, but it refines you. It refines the qualities that you have. Now, in my groups, my workshops, I teach something called pranayama, which is the control of prana. It's a breathing technique. And meditation is absolutely paramount when you're developing. You need to focus your attention. And if somebody is not, people say to me, or they might say to you, I can't visualize. I don't have the ability to visualize. I've got a butterfly mind. Well, that kind of statement tells me that they're never going to be a clairvoyant to begin with, because clairvoyance is based on the creative energies, the image-making faculty in the brain. So before that can develop fully, you need to learn to visualize. And in Buddhism and yoga, Hinduism, they use something called tratak, which is just looking at the flame of a candle. Now, it sounds ridiculous, but if you stare at a candle in subdued light and just hold the candle on the table as near to eye level as possible, and just gaze at it without blinking for as long as you can. And when your eyes begin to tear, try not to move your gaze away from the candle, but look at the flame as long as you can. And when you can't look any longer, close your eyes, place your hands on your eyes and apply a little bit of pressure and allow the after image of the flame to appear in your mind. Now, eventually, that after image will fade and disappear. You open your eyes and you return your gaze to the flame. Now, you do that 3 times. And if you do that every day, along with some controlled breathing, you'll find that your ability to focus will improve over a period of time. Some people, it will improve in a lot quicker than others. But it's important that you apply yourself and be very positive and also patient. Now, people might say, well, what's that got to do with mediumship? It's got a lot to do with mediumship, because mediumship is also based on the energies that you create. You spoke about the aura. The aura is a database of information, not only for the people that you're working with, but also for the medium themselves. And there are changes in the aura when a medium is developing. It extends even more into the surrounding space. And the more focused you are, the easier it is for disembodied souls, disembodied energies to infiltrate your aura and give you information of different kinds. Now, it depends what skills you have, whether you're clairaudient, which is the ability to hear. A lot of clairaudient mediums, not all, but a lot of them, will have problems with the pancreas or the thyroid gland. You'll find a lot of people with thyroid deficiency, either overactive or underactive, will very often be clairaudient, the ability to hear supersensual sounds. People with clairvoyance, they see spirit. They often suffer from headaches, migraine, sometimes depression, because certain depressive illnesses will stimulate the creative faculties and also bring out the mediumistic qualities that you have. So mediumship, it sounds cruel, and I've got all of these, by the way, but mediumistic development has its own problems, its own pains, and these are things you have to shoulder, you have to put up with.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And it's something that I've noticed about, there's very few true physical mediums in the world, but I've noticed that in history, many of the physical mediums tended to take on physical ailments towards the end of their career. I don't want to name names, but I saw that a lot with a lot of the physical mediums and some of the mental mediums, but especially with the physical mediums, some of them, taking on physical illnesses and so forth.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I saw more than anything was the type of palsy in the face. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and that was something, and it just seemed that's, so people who are trying to be like a physical being, it's like, it's a big responsibility. It takes a toll on your body when you start doing that. So you really have to be pretty stealth health-wise to take on that type of mediumship. And I don't think just anybody's going to, I don't think that we choose what kind of mediums we are. I think that it's kind of innate. And as you develop, you find out what kind of medium you are. Can develop it. But I think for those people who are truly physical mediums, I think they have a huge responsibility in taking care of their bodies, because I think it takes a toll on them physically.
Oh, I think so. And also, we have very few physical mediums in the UK in this day and age, but there's quite a few of transfiguration mediums. These are mediums who use a little red box, a red light in front of them, and they have their face changes. They'll move, and it looks, to all intents and purposes, that they're just pulling faces, like you've just said, like a palsy of some kind. And and a skeptic can pull it to pieces, but it's only when these mediums actually go to you with an information, a message, and say, "I've got your father here," or your grandmother, that you actually see the form of your grandmother or your father appearing around this person's face. Now, that's quite an interesting form of mediumship.
Absolutely.
But it's have you ever seen?
Oh, yes. I have quite a few times. Not so much when I went to England to study up in Lilydale. I saw a couple of mediums that did it. One who was actually from Arthur Findlay. who would go over there. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. It was absolutely amazing to sit
It,
there.